This is a time when America was a little bit wild and untamed, particularly for women.
The turning point for Joe, his sort of moral journey can be seen between the two women who are in his life.
There's an Emma section.
The first woman is exactly the type of woman a lot of people fall in love with when they're 19. Somebody who is cold and unavailable, and they believe that ultimately I can melt her heart. Ultimately, I will be her hero.
There's a Graciela section.
We will not be lovers.
Time tends to remove that illusion, and also it tends also to make you go, I don't need to be a savior. Who's going to be saving me simultaneously?
Nunca habrá otro.
That becomes, in the second incarnation, it becomes Graciela. And that begins to awaken something in Joe.
There's the Loretta section.
Miss Loretta Figgis.
I wanted to put something purely beautiful into Joe's life that had no sexual component.
Had really committed actors that were really excited and wanted to do it. I was floored by how lucky I was.
We do what we want to do.
We go where we want to go.
Sienna Miller just got this wonderful kind of Bonnie and Clyde quality. It's that wonderful, vibrant energy that she brings to it that makes it feel so alive.
It's a real swank place. I think it's very clear from the offset that she is who she is, and she is a very strong, very no-nonsense, very unfazable, tough Irish lass.
But also she's somebody who's struggling because she's always sort of under somebody's foot.
You have to see You Know Who on Saturday.
Fuck you know.
That's the idea.
She's a girl trying to navigate a world that is hard and dark and murderous and misogynistic.
It's a dog-eat-dog world, and she's not going to be the one that gets eaten.
I would back her in a fight any day.
I think Emma represents the love that is thoughtless and careless and irrational and doesn't care about any of the consequences.
I mean, she's been brought up in a world where there really isn't time to focus on love as a theory or a verb. It's a concept, and I think that she comes as close as she is able to loving somebody, and those feelings of vulnerability terrify her.
She betrays Joe ultimately to protect herself and to save her own life.
They could have run, and I think that her factoring in the need for her own protection means that she does lead him into a trap.
It sort of breaks her heart to do it, but she's a very hard-hearted character living a tough life.
But I also think she's just a little ruined thing, and she doesn't really have a choice in anything. It is surviving.
I think it's a life with a lot of tough decisions like that.
The most interesting about the end scene is that whatever Emma felt in her life, she feels no longer.
Say what you have to say.
I don't think she feels an awful lot of remorse. I think she just accepts that this was the hand that she was dealt, and she didn't have a choice, and she is who she is. And within that finds some sense of peace and freedom.
I'm free, Joseph. If you want to come by now, you got an open invitation.
Zoe, she was just perfect for the part. It was like she was born to it. It just was perfect casting. She's fabulous in the movie. She fit the bill, and she's an amazing actress.
We've met.
My mistake, of course, we have met.
Yes, we have.
Graciela, becomes his love and his real, deep, rich, more fully evolved love relationship.
They just have a conversation with their eyes.
They have a very strong bond, and Joe, falls in love. He falls very hard.
There's something about how he identifies with us because he's from the other side of the tracks as well.
They both think about how to be in the world, about what it means to make certain choices.
My father told Esteban and I, you cannot truly live unless there is something for which you would die.
Sounds like a good man.
There's an integrity to how they are as people that I feel that Joe finds that very appealing.
She's also somebody who's made compromises and had to give up some things to get what she wanted.
He was ready to die for Emma, but I feel like she kind of set the standards of like, hey, choose better.
Can I take your name?
You want to get married?
Regard yourself in a higher way. Be wiser with the people that you choose to love.
Graciela Coughlin. Best thing that ever happened to that name.
¿Te gusta?
Sí.
She finally found somebody that loved her and respected her, so she was able to sort of surrender to love. But there's also a lot that she gave him. She taught him just the beauty of unconditional love.
She's who really teaches him what it means to be a man.
There's never been anyone like you in my life. One day I'm gonna be good enough for you.
In the short union that they have, they give each other so much strength and a reason to live, as opposed to a reason to die for.
She's gonna be a star in Hollywood.
It's only a screen test, Daddy.
Elle has this wonderful quality where she can be genuinely childlike and also be like a mature young woman. She's right on the cusp of sort of becoming a young woman herself, and she's got a tremendous reservoir of maturity, and yet she also has that lightness of spirit that children have.
A screen agent came here and picked out a few girls. What struck me about it was that she was so young. She was thrust into these extremely adult situations.
I think Loretta goes through a brutal experience.
I think she had pretty serious depression and PTSD.
Pleased to meet you, miss.
As a girl, she has a sparkle. I mean, there's definitely a twinkle inside her. I think that she loses that sparkle and she loses that twinkle. And also the shame of it. Gossip definitely stirs around and everyone knows, oh, did you hear about Loretta? The sadness of feeling like she lost her childhood is, I think, so devastating to her because she wants to get that back. She wants to be a young girl again. Personal liberty is the liberty of a murderer.
She finds strength in religion as her route to feeling good again after this horrible trauma. She becomes extremely religious.
She went through her life a lot thinking that she didn't really have a purpose and, oh, maybe I'll do this preaching. I ask you, how cheap is your virtue? She finds that she can actually persuade people and they're gonna believe her. The things that she's talking about are really intense, and at the end, Loretta finds her power.
Why does my father hate you so much?
I'm a crook.
We see in the cafe scene the sort of realer side of Loretta.
What did you do?
We see her a little bit more uncertain.
I think Loretta sees a good man inside of Joe, and she's not afraid of him. She's not afraid to say, well, these are my beliefs, and you know what, respect that.
She's seen the worst of people and what we do to each other, and she's sort of been through what she thinks is the worst of it, so it changes her.
We're all going to hell.
That's big for her. Someone is finally seeing her, and she feels like she's seen for the first time in a way, even though maybe I think it's too late, but still.
Loretta Figgis cut her own throat yesterday.
What?
I think she kills herself because she can't get over the traumatic incident that happened to her.
She didn't make it to Hollywood.
How her father reacted to it, how he makes her feel miserable.
It's very complicated because even though he does beat her, I think that in a weird psychological way, she starts to think that she did something wrong and that her dad has the right to do that. And that's really messed up, and I don't think she can take it anymore.
I don't know if there is a God.
There's so many different layers to this girl, because essentially she's just a little girl.
This is heaven. Right here.
Live by night means sort of living by your own rules, living by your own set of morals, you know, unfettered by the sort of how you would live by day, where you have to follow all the laws and rules and that sort of thing.
Just slow down and stop driving like we did something.
Relax. In the gangster community, there's a real hierarchy. I think we all get along. Forever way of lifestyle.
Since the black and white movies, there were huge films telling this kind of story. So classic.
I have always been attracted to what I simply call old-time movies. Good story, good characters.
Joe Coughlin starts off as a guy who goes to the First World War as a believer. He becomes very disillusioned after that war and decides he's not going to take orders from anybody. And so he takes up a life as an outlaw. I think what Joe has to learn about himself over the course of the movie is about how to be in the world, about what it means to make certain choices, what the price is of those choices. At the end of the movie, Joe finally has come to grips with what the price is for living by night, what the price you pay is for living by your own terms, making your own rules. He's lost something that's profoundly meaningful to him, and only then has he realized that the things he was searching for were right in front of him.
Graciela.
I think Dion really represents a guy that's committed to living by night, the gangster mentality. This is who I am, and this is who I'll always be. I will live this way and die this way. And Joe, I think, is grappling with that the whole movie, what kind of man he wants to be.
He's just a great, that guy.
There's a loyalty there. There's a strong friendship and a love between these guys.
Sorry about your mom.
One of the great things about him is he's really proud to be a gangster. He's really happy with it. If he wants to shoot somebody, if he wants to hit somebody, if he wants to grab a girl and kiss her, if he wants to grab that drink, if he wants to go dance, he does what he wants to do.
Dion Bartolo. Yes, of course. This way, please. Mr. Esteban is waiting.
There's all kinds of situations where a guy who's not necessarily as physically tall is quite intimidating and scary.
When I was working on the role, I was trying to figure out how I would be his bodyguard, how I would be a guy that he would look to protect him and be in gunfights with him.
Get you to a doctor. Oh, fuck, it hurts. Yeah.
Frank Nitti, who's Al Capone's right-hand man, was smaller than Capone. They called him the enforcer, and everybody was really scared of him.
And Loretta Figgis cut her own throat yesterday.
It doesn't matter how big or tall or fat or skinny you are.
She's got moxie. I couldn't do that.
If you have a killer instinct in you, if you're willing to raise a gun up to someone's head and pull the trigger, then you're dangerous.
He gained 40 pounds for the movie. He thought he couldn't grow taller, he'd get wider.
But you're more of a Nance than me. What'd you say?
In the book, they call him fat and they call him heavy. So I put on about 42 pounds to do it. I showed up at the camera test and I had some of that weight on, and Ben really liked it, and so I kept going. A lot of ice cream and beer and pasta. And it was a lot of fun, to be honest with you.
He lost all the 40 pounds, amazing. He got really fat and then he really worked it off.
Is that enough signs for you?
Chris plays it great.
We meet him as a tough love dad, but it's a little deeper than that. I didn't start the fight, Joseph, so don't criticize how I finished it. Tough love comes number one as the prerequisites for a father. The tough bit comes first. The love is understated, but very clearly there.
This is my father, Tom Coughlin.
He's a police captain, and he doesn't approve of the fact that his son has decided to be an outlaw.
It's quite easy in the eyes.
Yeah, she is.
But nonetheless, his son is still his son, and he loves him.
What you put out in the world will always come back to you. He's not completely sober, and he's not completely drunk either. And he's not particularly good, and he's not particularly bad.
He's not an upright cop himself, but the nature of being a police officer at that time was different.
You're kind of negotiating a situation where the moral compass is pretty skewed. I have no illusions. I'm a practical man. And I think he attempts to maintain a fairly stringent one, but he's very ambitious. And nothing happens without compromise.
Let me see what I can do.
Seeing what you can do is of little interest to me.
Corruption and backroom dealing was sort of part of the game and still considered the province of the good guys.
You can bend the rules, but I think his son has definitely gone over the line. Although it's Coughlin, we pronounce it at home, so I would have started off as Coughlin and ended up as Coughlin.
We pronounce Coughlin in American English. In Irish, it's Coughlin. I thought that mine was the generation where the name pronunciation switched, where his father would say Coughlin and Joe would say Coughlin.
Ben informed me that that's the way that it's pronounced here in America.
He's just one of the great actors alive. He's phenomenal in the movie. He's got very little to do, and he does so very much with it.
The moral duplicity of Figgis is a great challenge. That's why you get into the business for characters like this. Not everything is black and white. I know we live in a fallen world.
He's a religious man and a former veteran and a man of real strong principles.
What kind of guy's the chief?
Well, he's a cop, so he's an asshole.
He sort of has to deal with the corruption that's around him and all the crookedness and illegality, but he's got his own very strong sort of moral code.
Never make the mistake of thinking that I'm corruptible. I think he is broken. His wife dies, and there is a horrific event at Loretta's end. Figgis is crushed. His life is destroyed, and he's lost his mind.
That's not right.
Working with Chris has been amazing. We worked together in the town, and he was so lights out good. He was perfect for the role of the sheriff. He's just a wonderful actor, and he has this great sense of moral rectitude and wisdom, and he just was perfect.
Reading Dennis's book, and in my research, I'm seeing how far Dennis went and how much he covered of the late 20s and 30s. Research and the study is half my fun.
We did the camera test. He showed up, and he was already like in it and there, and that guy, and everyone kind of tiptoed around him because he was so obviously intensely working.
This is the kind of film that got me interested in the business.
I wanted both Albert and Masso to be people that the audience wasn't familiar with.
My fortunes have changed a little bit. Me and Marcel, we patched things up.
I really wanted them to be scary because no one had seen them before. I didn't want the audience to be comfortable with them.
We don't get into this game to play second.
Remo has done all work in Italy.
When you play head of the mafia, sometimes you see really not refined people, but Maso is not like that. He's clever. And a man with the power of other men's lives in my hands. Maso has this problem. He has a stupid son, but it's still his son, because he wants to leave something to his son. You teach Tiger the ropes, teach him to fish. That makes him weak.
Maybe that's the point, smart guy.
Robert has mostly worked in Ireland.
This guy's a personification of evil, really.
Good to put a face to the name.
And he makes no bones about what he does and why he does it, because actually, then, in order to survive in that environment, you had to act brutally and ruthlessly if anybody challenged you.
Don't worry.
I would never have brought him here.
I think Albert's devastated because he loved her.
Take it to the car, Connie.
I'm sorry.
I think he becomes quite emotional, almost a tragic figure in a way, because the memory of Emma is suddenly starkly there.
She's dead.
It was such a blast.
She looked dead to you?
I absolutely hit the lottery. Every one of my first choices said yes. I just turned the camera on and watched them go.
What makes a housewife in Nebraska respond is gonna be very different than what makes a fisherman in Cape Cod respond.
His stuff resonates with me, obviously.
People ask me that about my books all the time too, and I don't know.
I think ultimately what it really comes down to is the characterizations, the way that Dennis dissects, a lead character.
Like I said, I ain't a gangster.
I have no idea what an audience is. I just feel like if the work is true and the work feels authentic and it's compelling, they'll respond to that. When I was 20, I had what I consider the greatest realization of my life, which was to realize that I sucked at everything else. There's just nothing else I'm good at. I have no other talent. And so my options became extremely narrow. And I said, I think I should just focus on this writing thing because I love it so much. I'd always wanted to write a gangster book, just since I was little, like really little. There was this little boy in The Given Day, and I kept seeing the tragedy of the family through his eyes. That the family in The Given Day is a police captain's family, and Joe sees behind the veil of that. All he sees is hypocrisy, left and right. So about midway through the writing of The Given Day, I went, oh my God, I got my gangster.
You must be Joe. Good to put a face to the name.
He writes great, punchy, fun dialogue and characters, and he's got great story architecture.
I usually have a rough outline. By a rough outline, I mean something that's in my head. It's usually about 3 things that will happen in this book. Never, though, did I write as loosely as Live by Night. I write a lot about fathers. Questions of parenting are in Mystic River. They're in Gone Baby Gone. They're in just about every single thing I've written outside of Shutter Island, I'd say.
Mind if I sit down?
3 books that concern the Coughlin family. I think to me, they're the father and son triptych. They're all about issues about fatherhood. And the ultimate point of the book is what his father says to him very early on in the book. He says, if you put violence out in the world, it will come back to you.
But never how you predict.
I think one of the things that Dennis does so well is tackle the male ego in a really, really complex, interesting way.
I think you can see in my work over and over and over again, it's like the only crime I don't forgive. I don't like racists.
Joe Coffin.
Don't shake hands with papists. No offense.
You want a real asshole in a Dennis Lehane book, it's usually, oh yeah, that's the racist guy.
This man is a bootlegger and a fornicator with niggers. He's to be tarred and feathered.
I brought the guy alive in a big way. I made him very understandable, but at the same time, I think you can feel authorial dislike. What gets thrown out of a book to make a film, also, you can't put in a book. So like, what can be done with a good actor and a look? That's pages of a book. So I would argue that they both have strengths and limitations as forms, as narrative art forms.
There were significant challenges to condense it. You know, I had to lose a lot of stuff from the book and lose a lot of plot elements and a lot of nuance.
It would have been a 7-hour-long film.
It was hard to do the engineering on this adaptation.
What I would do is I would write the book, and then after the book, then I would say, oh, who could play who could play, you know. Now, the people in my life tend to do that, and they can't understand why I don't. And I'm like, because it's a moot point. There's just so many of the mysteries of casting, the vagaries of casting, that I just don't even play the game anymore. I just kind of go, you know, boy, I hope it works.
She didn't make it to Hollywood. She just made it to Los Angeles.
A writer gets really lucky. This almost never happens. There's moments when somebody says a line, and it's exactly as you heard it when you came up with it.
You do not ever call me by my Christian name. Are we clear?
When Elle says, I don't know if there's a God.
I hope there is. And I hope he's kind.
It was exactly as it was in my head. Yeah. So those are those magical moments.
That'd be swell.
All I control is who I sell it to. That's it. That's when the moment I sell it to you, my control ends. So I only sell to good people. I don't sell directly to studios. And from that point on, I owe you my faith. I sold it to you. And it's so far that faith's been rewarded a lot. Like, you know, by Clint Eastwood, by Martin Scorsese, by Ben. You know, I've been lucky.
I just think Dennis is a great writer. You know, I love his books. I'm a fan.
What's interesting, Dennis is the other famous Boston guy, and I think he just writes great, gritty characters and dialogue.
It's almost like me and Ben were in the same homeroom in some ways. Like, I was there the first one he tried, and he did beautifully. And I adore Gone Baby Gone.
I made him older so I could play him.
Ben joked at me, you know, joked with me. He said, I hope you like the film except for the actor who's too old for the part. But, you know, he's not too old for the part, it just becomes a different part. He's already an adult when we meet him in the film. It's about a man making a decision, I would argue, that a man makes a decision to say, I no longer want to be part of this carnage, that the price is too high, that what I am putting out into the world is a type of evil, and I need to walk away. It's a little bit different than the journey in the book, I think. Why do you like an orange? I mean, like, as opposed to a rutabaga. I mean, I don't know. I don't examine my obsessions too closely. I'm afraid they'll evaporate if I do. If I understand what I'm doing too well, I don't think I'll do it very, very well.
In the movie, there's a car chase sequence in the movie, and I had done a car chase in the town that I really liked, and I wanted to try something different.
Let's go.
It felt like I was shooting an old-time gangster movie, which was great.
Once you put all those little pieces together, that's how we actually started to figure out, well, how we could construct it.
The car chase in Lawrence, that's, I think, one of the best I've ever seen.
It's just literally a car chase with a lot of action and obviously a number of different streets.
Where we're going
for something that's real, and that was a grounded action scene, not something where cars are flying through the air and doing things that are physically impossible.
So you start at a bank, and then you need to get chased through the town, and then you have to make an escape into a place where you're going to end up in a burning woods.
I went back and looked at all the classic Model 8 chases and stuff like that and tried to find the cool moments in those and then come up with our own as well. The car chase in general is a plotted plan of where everything goes and working the character into it as it moves along.
We had 2 storyboard artists working to come up with the idea of how to make the chase function at the highest level it could.
There was actually 3 sets of storyboards because they started this project a while back. And then the 3rd set of storyboards came from Bob, which were great. The more about the camera moves and feelings of actors. Well, I looked at it and tried to figure out how it worked practically, is how the cars did what they did and how they ended up in certain positions, and started doing that.
It was a complicated sequence. We didn't have a great deal of space. The car chase was almost down to the shot. This was one of the first things we had to shoot. We had to make more of the space than was actually there.
We kind of mashed them together and told the story.
Using these old cars was definitely a challenge to make it as gripping and visceral as it could possibly be. Period cars don't start. They're not reliable. I don't recommend buying a car from the 1920s. They all had the secret mojo handshakes ways you had to start the car and ways to keep it going.
You wanted to feel like they were traveling at a high speed.
They have 18 horsepower and they're next to impossible to drive.
I think when you're traveling at 20 miles an hour, it's a vast difference from when you travel at 40 or 50 miles an hour. So the need for speed is vital.
But we rebuilt all the cars. We built new cars with old bodies.
They built a complete frame, motor, running gears, steering, braking, everything underneath them, and just put the old body on top.
So that we could have something that felt tense when we were getting chased.
That really helped us to be able to slide them and do what we wanted to do.
I didn't want it to feel like the world's slowest car chase scene.
The buggy one is the most complicated one. That was a hard one for me, because I actually sat on the car shooting Ben while he was driving him at a rapid pace.
They were able to shoot Ben in that car. Such a great opportunity because you're not cutting to just a head in a car. Be able to use wider shots where you see your star in the car.
You're actually along for the ride with him rather than sitting back and watching a story unfold in front of you. You're involved.
Other shots, of course, were almost handheld in the car beside or mounted on the outside. It's the ultimate arm. It's a remote head on a crane, on a Porsche, generally. You sit inside and you control. The crane itself can do a 360, and it can drop or raise in height.
Action scenes always have pitfalls. There's always something you don't get, or too much of one thing and not enough of another. For the sequence, which I guess is around 4 minutes, I suppose there was probably 5 hours of footage. When I first got the footage, I was told that I was going to get an exterior of that T-bone because Joe's sort of distracted. Ben had decided, let's play it from Joe's point of view. You see the car coming through Joe's window right at him, and it's much more visceral. You don't see the actual impact, but you feel it and you see the car. If you're with the character, you don't need that sort of big objective shot.
Really cut a great scene. I just shot shots.
Every good action scene to me, the 2 elements that are most important is they have a story and that they're personal to the characters.
I don't think he wanted to really be involved with a violent act. I think he was thrown into it, and because of circumstances, it escalated and got out of his control.
He's distracted by this love for this woman, and he's looking to the future, and it ends up getting him in trouble.
I've got Emma on my mind, and I'm not really thinking about where I'm putting the gear in.
Let's go! What are you doing?
And what are you thinking about? Forget about the dame.
We also noticed that he doesn't shoot anybody. He never pulls a weapon out the entire time, which is a rather remarkable concept that a bank robber doesn't shoot.
Found Dion to be kind of acting out the violence so Joe doesn't have to.
He's just a loose cannon. When in doubt, he reacts violently. Doesn't think about it, just pulls the guns and starts shooting at people. There's a lot going on in a very small space. The road was just big enough for one car really to go by or down it.
You know, I think the best composers are storytellers, and I think Harry did a great job of giving the scene dynamic range with the score.
The cue starts with a bunch of low woodwinds, which I don't normally even hire. Oversized bassoon, which is the contrabassoon, the oversized clarinet, which is the bass clarinet. Go, pop, 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 pop. I have a lot of brass punctuating. Pop, 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 pop. There's something specific about the sound. I'm at a loss as to how to explain what that is. It has a whiff of something that's past.
Just wanted to put the audience in the shoes of the characters and have them be as frightened and as feeling under siege as the characters were.
Because I think that's all our jobs, is we're trying to be good storytellers.
That's what we all strive for, to give him how he wrote it.
Want to make Ben happy, obviously.
I knew what I wanted to accomplish. I knew what Ben wanted to accomplish. I think this scene's fantastic, so I'm going to say we all did.